Hey guys, how's your day?
Good.
Yeah? Anything new and exciting going on?
Not really.
Played spike ball in PE.
Nice. Can anyone volunteer to read this for me? This statement?
In the French composer Carol Saint-Saëns' 14-movement work, The Carnival of the Animals, he uses instruments from the string, woodwind, and percussion families to create a unique representation of different animals.
Good, thank you, Araceli. And does anyone recognize anything that we learned from last week in this statement?
We learned about the string, woodwind, and percussion families.
Right, okay, so let's talk about those a little bit. Can anyone raise their hand and tell me a little bit about the string family? Just anything you remember. You can name some string instruments, some qualities of the string family. Yes.
They have strings.
Yes, thank you.
Violin.
Violin, okay, that's an example of one. Okay, anything else?
The cello.
Cello,
A bass.
a bass. Okay, so we have some examples of string instruments. Can anybody tell me a little bit about the string family? Like what classifies an instrument as a string instrument? We know they have strings. Does anyone remember what the strings might be made out of?
A
Yeah.
horseshoe bow.
Horseshoe bow, yes, okay, so we have a bow, and most string instruments are played with a bow, and that's how we actually get the sound. We use the bow on the strings, and the bow is made out of horsehair. I'm going to write that down. What are the strings made out of? Does anyone remember? There's nylon strings,
Metal.
metal strings, yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the woodwind family.
And this is wood and wind.
Wood and wind, good. They were mostly made out of wood. However, today a lot of times they're made out of something else rather than wood.
Metals.
Metal, right. So we're going to primarily see metal and wind. What does the wind have to do with it?
It's the breath
The breath. So all of our woodwind instruments have a
mouthpiece.
mouthpiece. Right. So that's where we get the wind, is we're going to use our breath to play them. How do you get the specific notes with the woodwinds?
Last time I think you talked about like covering different holes on
Holes, right.
the like on the flute or the clarinet.
Okay, good. And just a little bit of a recap on the percussion family.
There's like lots of different kinds of instruments.
Lots of different kinds. What is one instrument that is categorized primarily as percussion but could also be considered a string instrument? Does anyone know that?
Piano.
Piano, good job. So we're going to have piano here as an example. That one confuses people sometimes. Anything else about the percussion family? Usually we're doing what to it?
Oh, like hitting.
Yeah, we're hitting stuff a lot. Not the correct term to use, but for purposes of understanding and recognizing our instrument families, that's a good way to remember it. A little bit about this that we talked about. The French composer Camille Saint-Saëns is how you pronounce it. He created a 14-movement work called The Carnival of the Animals, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to play one movement from this. When we listen to it for the first time through, I want you to listen and start thinking about the different instrument families that we have written up here and the descriptions you gave me of them. And we're going to talk about it after. So that's what I want you to keep in mind. I'm going to play it for you real quick. Alrighty, can someone just give me a little bit of a description of what they heard?
I think there was piano.
There was piano. So we have one thing from the percussion family. Violin. So there is violin. There are quite a few different string instruments that you can hear throughout this piece, right? So we have the string family represented, percussion family represented. That's the different families we heard and the different instruments we heard. The other thing that we talked about up here was that he uses these movements to represent different animals. Different animals, and I have some written on the other side of the board here. These are all 14 movements have a different kind of animal he's trying to represent. And I want you to think a little bit about them. Here's the list of the animals, and we're going to play it again, and I want you to try to tell me which animal you think is being represented in this movement based on the knowledge that you have on the different instrument groups and what qualities of those instruments, what they would be representing. So I'm going to play it one more time. Did that sound like a big animal or a small animal?
Big animal.
A big and small? Okay. Okay, so let's discuss a little more. So does anyone kind of have an idea of what they think? Talk with your group members. Just talk amongst yourself and see if you can come up with anything.
Big and small.
I heard birds.
Even the birds in that?
So I hear some good discussion going on. I heard you talk about the birds. What makes you think about the birds?
Well, the way that the rhythm of the piano plays, it just sounds like it's flying.
Okay, I like that. Any other ideas? You thought big animal, right?
I felt like elephant. I think it was the violin.
Okay. So the violin made you think of, the violin did, with the strings coming in, it did create a very full sound.
Yeah.
A very full sound. Is there any other qualities about that that sounded like the rhythm maybe, that had a consistent rhythm? No? Okay. So, when I think of it, what I hear is something royal. It sounds like important. The song sounds very important. Do any of these animals up here represent something important or like royalty to you?
Lion.
Lion. Correct. So this movement was called, I didn't put the full title on because it would have given it away a little too much, but it's called the Royal March of the Lion. It's the introduction of the piece. So that was a really good discussion and review of our instrument families, and we incorporated that into listening to a piece of music and discovering how we can use instruments to represent something bigger, right? So what I want you to do when you go home tonight, or I'm going to have this due next week, but what I want is for you to review your instrument families, and I want you to write a one-page paper. I know, sorry, why are you writing paper in music class? But I want you to review our instrument families through the Carnival of the Animals. So on our class website, I made a playlist of all 14 movements that is in Sanson's piece of the Carnival of the Animals. What I want is for you to pick one movement of the 14, and you're going to write just a little bit about the composer and a little bit about the history of this piece. That could just be a little bit as part of your introduction. Maybe a little bit about his life. There's some interesting things. And a little bit about why he wrote this piece and when he wrote it. And then when you pick your movement, what I want you to do is to talk about the title of the movement. It's going to have an animal, most likely, is the title of the movement. And I want you to talk about how the instruments that are used and the different instrument families that are represented, how they are used to represent that animal. Does anyone have any questions? Is it pretty clear? Alright, so good work today. I want that by next week as soon as you come to class. And that's it. I will see you later and you're dismissed.